I'm Linda Antwi. Welcome, ladies. I'm so excited to be talking about Sydney to the max. A couple of things that just really touched my heart, both of you ladies, is the fact that, I'm a grown lady, and I know this show is geared to children, specifically 6 to 11, but it speaks to everyone who has ever had to deal with hair. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, and I'll start with you, Carlease. Why was it important for you to be a part of this episode? Just because over generations, we look at Black women, biracial women, and the things that we've had to deal with hair. And this is not a conversation that we would have even had 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. You kind of answered the question. It is a conversation that we have all had. Little Black girls growing up from day one, it's been a thing with our hair, and whether our parents were going to straighten it or perm it or whatever to alter the natural hair that came out of our heads, somehow the message came to us that it was not okay, that it wasn't accepted, that it wasn't beautiful, and it was just so much stuff around our hair, but it was always private. And I don't know, we weren't having these conversations openly, and I don't think we thought that anybody else cared, let alone understood. I don't think they even, non-Black people even knew that there was an issue. They probably just looked at our hair and they was like, well, that's your hair.
Right.
But they didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. And not just for vanity, not just because you wanted to change the color or the texture or you wanted to be straight or curly, but because it was your identity. It was your value. It was how you were perceived. There was so much attached to it. So for it to come out, thank you, Disney, in a children's show with a mixed child, I think is huge. Yeah. It's huge. Let's open it up. Let's talk about it because we're still dealing with it.
Absolutely. And we are still dealing with it. And, there are many states in the United States that are passing laws about hair discrimination, which to me still makes me sad in 2021. Kourtney, when you were writing this episode, obviously I know the answer, but I'm still going to ask the question. Your inspiration came from your own experiences, your mom's experiences. Where did it come from?
Growing up, I'm down south. I live in Texas, from Texas, born and raised, living in a small town, especially a small town. Tradition is huge. It's a huge part of our culture. I can't even talk. Our culture, and straightening your hair was super important. And like Carlease mentioned, it was the equivalent of professionalism, less threatening, especially in school. I never forget going to private school, an all white school at that. And, knowing that my hair had to be tamed, and I use the word tamed because that's what my grandmother would say, and my aunties would say, oh, it needs to look nice, and I never knew why, plaiting my hair or straightening it or, wearing it a certain way would make me be beautiful or make me look nice and neat. And I just never understood it. And so I pulled from my experience when writing this episode for sure. And I would say my story was more Alicia's story, obviously, because I'm not biracial. So I really, writing Sydney's story, obviously it's great writing it, but I related more to Alicia's character because I did have that difficult conversation with my mother of just letting her know, I don't understand why I have to go through this dreadful process of burning my scalp and sitting in a chair, seriously, I was just didn't understand it. Why aren't the white kids going through this? Why aren't my Hispanic friends going through this? Why do I have to go through it? And my mom would tell me, oh, it just looks nicer, and your hair is very curly. So, and I think a part of it too, she didn't know how to style curly curly hair too. But, you know, eventually she loosened up and she allowed me to not, she was like, okay, you don't want perms, you don't have to get them. And I remember it was a good year where, you know, because the transitional stage back then, you know, the big chop wasn't a thing. So I had like half of my hair straight and half of it was curly, which I didn't care because I knew it was growing out. But yeah, I mean, Alicia, you know, in the 90s story, she vividly, and oh my goodness, a shout out to Cassidy, you know, with a beautiful performance in Carlease as well, saying that this isn't me, you know, and that's how I felt strongly about, like, this isn't me, you know, having straight, like, I wanted my hair to be in its natural state. And it's crazy because, like, my hair is straight right now as I'm talking to you. It's like such a contradiction, but yeah, I do wear my hair natural oftentimes. But yeah, I definitely pull from my experience with Alicia's story, and I'm so happy I'm able to tell that. And, you know, even though it was so long ago, I do feel like there are still little Black girls who are dealing with similar issues. So, and, you know, and wanting to just, you know, be a part of this natural hair movement.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So my niece is biracial, and my parents are African. And so my parents are, well, my mom specifically is helping with the whole hair process. And she already does not like to get her hair, quote unquote, combed out, right? Because that's a whole thing, the hair day combed out. So, Carlease, the scene where Grandma Maya, Judge Maya, is at the hair salon that really struck me as well was when the stylist came up and said, and I know we've all heard this before, look at all that beautiful hair on your head. Remember that scene? Yeah. And then you always, for me personally, and I guess my question is, in the show, you guys also address, not directly, but indirectly, the fact that, for Black women, Black girls specifically, it was always a matter of, like, you had to have a lot of hair on your head that made you beautiful. And if you didn't have a lot of hair on your head, then, like, whoa. And so I thought it was interesting that that underlying statement at the hair salon by the stylist was mentioned there. Was that something that came to your mind as well, Carlease?
Well, I just want to share a story of how I can relate to that, because my mom had, like, very smooth, soft. She said she had some Indian in her blood, and so she had very straight, soft, shiny black hair. I was adopted, but doesn't mean anything because in one family you can have all textures and colors of hair. But my hair, I thought, and I'm not using this derogatorily, was nappy. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. I never knew the real texture of my hair. So I go through my whole entire life. My mom started perming my hair. It feels like the age of 3. My father was like, what are you doing to this child's hair? I never knew the real texture of my hair, which this is right now. At some point, I think it was in the late 90s, I decided that I was going to lock my hair. And I knew my mother wasn't going to like it. I knew and I was grown. I mean, grown. I was living in California. I had my own life, my own career. I went home. I didn't tell her I had been locking it. I just let her see it. And she made that face, and I was like, well, it is what it is. But as it started to grow, and she aged, and I don't know if it was her dementia or whatever, but I had locks all the way down my back. Like they would be caught, you know, if I tried. And she would just look at my hair and say, wow, your hair is so long. Look at all that hair. If Nana could see you now. So that's an example of what you're saying. It was the length. And my cousin Felicia was, does it move? Is it moving? Yep. Is it moving? Because that was another test. Yep. So what you were in your hair game was, you know, the length, the volume, and is it moving? Yeah. But, so yes, I could totally relate to that moment in the salon. Yeah, look at all that hair.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, preach. Listen, I have so many stories. This, again, Sydney to the Max, this episode is so important. And so, Kourtney, what made this specifically important to you? Because I did read a quote where it said that you said this was almost like a love letter to yourself.
Right. I think it's important because, every little Black girl have their own personal hair journey, right? And, Carlease had hers, I had mine, you have yours. And there are so many beautiful textures. You have curly, kinky, wavy, coily, and, what I've noticed about a lot of people with kinky hair, they wish they had straight hair. Even straight hair people sometimes say they wish they had curly hair. And wavy hair people wish they had more curl, and it's like, girl, work with what you got. Work with what God gave you, and what God gave you is so beautiful. And, and it's okay to do protective hairstyles. I mean, hell, I got in weave right now trying to protect my hair because I'm trying to grow it back. But when you watch this episode, it's a celebration of all textures. And, Black hair should not be labeled as difficult or unmanageable. It really, really, truly do compliment who you are. And when you are watching this episode, yes, you should fall in love with your hair. As you're watching this, I cannot wait until my niece, who is 7, who loves the skin she's in. And when I tell you, this girl, she loves braids, she loves twists, she loves to wear it natural, and her mom is not perming her hair, which is I'm super thankful for. But, there are times, because she does go to a white school in Texas, similar to my story, where she'll come home and say, Mom, can you straighten my hair? And, and again, it's almost like I don't want my sister to say, oh yeah, let's straighten it so you can, no, I want her to encourage her that your hair is beautiful the way it is. And so when little kids watch this, I just want them to feel good about who they are and their hair, and they can rock it any way they want to and still feel beautiful and look beautiful, because, you don't have to conform to what society say is right. You don't, because guess what? They're wrong.
All that. So, and Carlease, that moment you had with Sydney when you had the surprise visit was so important. The conversation, right? The hair conversation, because at some point we all have the hair conversation. Yeah. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about Clampy, which was her flat iron and having to straighten your hair, and her being biracial and not remembering ever a time wearing her hair natural, and then your character explaining to her, oh yeah, you used to wear the twists and the braids and all of that stuff. So just to jump off of what Kourtney said, how important that scene was for you in that moment.
I feel it was important because to either help her remember or to introduce her to the fact that there was a time when you did wear your hair naturally and wear them in all different types of styles that may be considered Black or African American, and realizing even myself the absence of the Black members of her family probably had something to do with it. Not in a negative way or a bad way, but I mean, even now today you see YouTube videos of white mothers, trying to figure out what to do with their children's hair, biracial or if they've adopted a Black child. That's something I don't think people consider, because like I said earlier, they don't know, that, oh, I see this beautifully coiffed Black girl with straight hair, that's just her hair. But that may not be the hair that grows out of her head. There was a process, literally, to get to that style. So now they have this Black child or biracial child, and they're like, oh, the hair. Oh my God, what do I do with it? So it was touching for me, and it was it made me feel good to be able to be the one to go, you know, there was a time, and not to put down the white side of her family. It's just that they didn't know. They just didn't know. And even Caroline, oh God, what's her character's name? Kourtney.
Grandma Judy?
Yes. Grandma Judy was just like, you know what, I didn't even think about it. I just took you to where I go. And that's what you do. You take your kids to where you're getting your hair done. You don't want to sit 3 hours and get your hair done and now take your child across town. And so you just don't think of it. You grab your child, you take them to where you get your hair done. And I think it was a very natural, innocent situation that Sydney found herself in. Yeah. And so now here I am to go, you know what, and maybe to also soften it. Like, there's nothing wrong here. It's just that you've just been a little removed. You know, so let me tell you how it was, and let me remind you and let you know that it's okay. It's totally okay. You have two things going on here, you know, two different things, and it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Kourtney, when you were writing this episode, and what I'm finding is so great during this, you know, crazy global pandemic, as well as is the conversation about representation and allowing our stories to start showing up on the big screen. So I guess my question to you is, when you were writing this, what was your writing process, and were you thinking about representation in the back of your mind?
Absolutely. You know, for so long, white people they've written our stories, you know, and I couldn't have imagined a white person writing this story. It's easy to Google. You can go and watch Chris Rock, Good Hair. You can even go and watch, you know, the Black Hair episode on Blackish. You can do all the work, you know, and study and ask your Black friends. But until you experience it on your, like, you can't write that, you know, not everyone can write that story. And so I had a conversation with our showrunner, you know, Mark Reisman, and I'm just like, I'm so thankful and grateful just of like you allowing me to tell that. He was like, why wouldn't I? He said, I wouldn't have anyone else write this story. He was like, this is your baby. And, you know, and we actually go into like with a writer's room, you know, once we have an idea, you know, and we do a synopsis, then we go to outline, and then, you know, the person who's in charge of the script, they go off and they write the script. Then we get network notes, and then we bring the script back to the room, and we all kind of rewrite it as a group, and not really changing much, but just punching up jokes here and there. And Mark was very adamant about, you know what, we're not going to do too much in this script. You know, like I want, you know, because that's usually the strategy and the rooms. And he was just like, no, I don't really want to touch much of this. Like, you know, we can punch up some jokes here and there, but in terms of like the context, the purpose of this, the message behind the story, we're not changing. Like Grandma Maya's line, no, we're not changing any of her lines. I was like, okay. So it was important too for us to have a Black director directing this episode. I couldn't have seen it like a white man like being able to direct this episode. Morenike, and I'm sorry, this is my boss here. So sorry.
Hey boss, hey.
Is that Mark?
It's Mark. Yes.
Mark.
I know. Mark, I am on a Zoom call.
Hey, Mark. Hey, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. Thank you for having this episode. All the black girl magic. We appreciate you.
He said it's Mark with a K.
Mark with a K. We will remember that. Mark Reisman, thank you so much for having this episode. It means so much.
I'll tell you right back. It's so crazy. We were just talking about it. So with Morenike, we would have our sidebar conversations of just like, okay, so this is what we need to, you know, make sure we capture. This is what, you know, we need to, we were involved in casting, set design, props, you know, everything. And Mark wanted us heavily involved and allowed us to take lead because he wanted this story to be authentic. And I could appreciate that. And so representation behind the camera, I can't stress that enough. In order not to get bad ratings, and because when I tell you Black Twitter will out you, and they will.
Listen. Kourtney, we have to talk about the parallel between behind the camera and in front of the camera, because the hair department had the same mentality. Like, the head of the hair department is a young white man, I believe, and he was just like, I can't lead this episode. Right. I am going to call in some brown faces that I know that are qualified to do this. Because they like you said, Linda, there was so much Black girl magic on that set. So more than I've ever seen. Right. And I've only been there once. But still, I don't know. And so behind the scenes was the same situation. Was the story. The story was being told behind the scenes at the same time that it was being told in front of the camera. The same exact. Was it going to be a wig? Were we going to straighten? Were we going to use water? Were we going to use product? Who's going to? And the person that the young man, I'm sorry I don't know his name, called in to head that episode. She had an opportunity to bring in 2 assistants. So not only are we telling the story from a Black actor, hairstylist point of view, we're also employing more people of color in all departments.
Right.
All departments.
And it's crazy how we all have like similar stories. And I always say this. I'm like, I feel like Black people we were all kind of raised the same. Like a lot of us were. And so it's interesting because Mark said he would talk to me privately about something, but then like on set, like Carlease, you or Cassidy or someone would say something. He was just like, he would think in his head like, damn, Kourtney said the same thing. Right. I'm like, yeah, I said, but that's why it's so important to have representation, because we may all have similar stories, but we experienced it differently, and we want, I just love the fact that one of the first questions Disney asked me was, who would I want to direct? And I was just like, oh, a Black woman. Only a Black woman know this story. And I'm not talking, I'm like, I want like, a Black woman, a true Black woman. They were like, okay, we got you. So, it was much fun, and I'm glad we're telling these stories. This is not the only story that we're going to tell.
This is my next question. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Hopefully, if we get picked up for a season 4, our plan is to dig deeper. I think for season 1 and season 2, we've seen Sydney with her white family a lot. And one of the things in my interview when I first came onto the show, I was just like, where's the mom? The mom passed away. Where's the grandmother? Oh, I'm like, oh, we need to see more of her. We need to see more of her Black side, and which I'm so thankful, because like now we've introduced, I'm not even supposed to say, let me not say much, but just
don't say it
more.
Mark was calling. Don't say it.
Let me hush.
You're killing me. That wasn't in the talking points.
Right.
I know, sorry. We'll just, see more of that side of her. Let's just say that. And I'm very happy that, of course, these stories Disney want us to tell. We have, a microaggression story that's coming out, and not even, let's just take identity out. There are some other stories that we're telling that Disney has never done before. Like we're telling a story about, her best friend, Olive, who her parents are going through a divorce, and, how to deal with that. But if we do get picked up for season 4, we're digging deeper into her cultural identity for sure.
I love it. I love everything about this. Before we go, I do want to say, Carlease, I recognize you in like everything. You're in like all the shows, all the time. And so I hope that I get to see more of Grandma Maya on this show. But I just want to share my gratitude, because you have had longevity in this industry. Like the Shameless, Dirty John, NCIS, the Mini Project, This Is Us, like all the stuff, all the time. Yeah. So just keep doing you, because I think that it's important for Black girls like us to see Black girls like you on TV.
Thank you,
And and Kourtney, from a fellow writer, fellow journalist, and reading your journey, YBF, BET, MTV, Kevin Hart's Dance On, all of that, and being on Disney. I just appreciate your journey because I know as a writer and freelance, it's not easy, right? So, having you at Disney and telling these stories, and you guys talking about also behind the scenes being important, I think that is fantastic. When does this episode air? Where can our viewers and listeners find the show? And what's next for you two?
April 30th is the premiere date. And you can find the show on the episode on Disney Channel. I'm not sure what the rules are with Disney Plus yet. I'll have to find that out for you. Maybe Lakeisha knows.
Yeah, it won't be on Disney Plus for a while. Season 1 and 2 are on Disney Plus, but you'll be able to catch this episode April 30th on Disney Channel and in Disney Now.
Perfect. Thank you.
What's next? I have a movie that's coming out at the end of the year called A Gospel Christmas with Lifetime. And that's with Kirk Franklin. Actually, I'm not supposed to say that yet. Sorry, I have a big mouth today.
Kourtney!
No, I need you seriously, I need some media training, girl. So
Don't get me in trouble with Lifetime.
I know. Sorry. Okay, let's just not add that. But I do have a Christmas movie that's coming out soon. But in terms of Disney Channel, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, prayers up, that we do get another season because I definitely want to tell more, Black stories.
And Carlease? Oh, Lord, you did not pull out the hot comb. You know how many scars I have on my head because of that hot comb?
I wish I had remembered this when we were shooting that episode, but I found this among my mother's things, and I probably should put it in a memory box someplace and just, because this is history right here.
Yes.
This is how they do it on the YouTube videos, right? They put their hand up. You see I was all backwards? Anyway,
that's been used.
I had to share that with you. I know we're not recording, but anyway, this is with you, Kourtney. So coming up next, there's sometimes we're not allowed to say things, but I might be visiting Sydney to the Max soon. Maybe. I mean, I'm not sure. And y'all have to keep watching and find out. There were a couple of shows that I did. I was hired for or I shot before the pandemic hit. So I'm looking for episodes of them to come out. One is called Special, and the other one, I think, what does he have? Muscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis. Is the showrunner actually has that condition, and he wrote a show about himself and his life, and so that got picked up. And a show called Pen 15. Those two.
I love that show.
Yeah, so I did a couple of episodes of that, waiting to see if that comes out. But I'm very Thank you, Kourtney. I'm very excited about booking my very first animated voiceover gig. I'm going to be doing that the day after I may be going back to Sydney to the Max. If maybe, it would be the day.
Congratulations.
You know what? You two. After we stop recording, you two and I are going to have a conversation.
Okay. So on that note, I'm going to stop recording.